lies. Satan is the true Lord and Master, and you can get a discount on KFC coleslaw if you act now.
And now what are they gonna do? They're gonna boycott KFC? That's what they did for Chick-fil-A. I wanna skip over to this graphic 5. Look at this tweet. Chick-fil-A hired a VP of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is bad, very bad. I don't want to have to boycott. Are we going to boycott? Are you kidding me? I am someone who likes to have relationships with women, right? I'm a queer woman. I still go to Chick-fil-A. They don't want to go just because they hired someone for diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is the most ridiculous reason to boycott anything. Any final thoughts on all this, Ben?
No, I'm just very hungry right now, and I'm gonna go with my devil buddies. What's that?
Let's go get some devil chicken.
I'm interested.
All right, that's where we have to go. Everybody else, stick and stay, because we've got the Young Turks on the other side of this. Ben, the people can find your comedy online and your videos on Rebel HQ. Anything you want to plug?
Sure, on June 10th, I'm doing my next virtual global show in my own weird community of mad ones. Go to benglebe.com or nowherecomedy.com to join us. It's a virtual interactive show. Your cameras and mics can stay on. You can be part of our weird world. And it is a very, very fun release and escape from the madness. So get a ticket right now and join us. It's gonna be a good one.
Thank you, Ben. All right, thanks for being here with us, everybody. We will see you tomorrow, and I will see you on Monday, the best day of the week. Bye, y'all.
Woo! It's up!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugaritic Kasparian with you guys. Lovely afternoon. We got some wild card stories for you guys later in the program. Okay,
a little bit.
This is one of our favorite kicks lately. How do you live to be 102 years old?
I know.
We have the answer.
Okay, lovely grandmother who explains what she believes has led to her long life. But I just want to tell you, this is the tease. She's lying to you, and I'll explain.
Well, I at least half believe her. So we'll get to that controversy later in the program.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
But we're of course going to start with political controversy. Disastrous one abroad in a second, but fairly disastrous one here at home to begin with, and that's the so-called debt ceiling deal. Is it really about the debt ceiling? And is it really a deal?
Is it?
Is it?
Well, we're gonna give you the facts. You can decide for yourselves. We're gonna share our point of view, of course. So let's get started.
But we also did something different. In this family, we may have a child that able-bodied, not married, no kids, but he's sitting on the couch collecting welfare. We're gonna put work requirements on that individual, so he's gonna have work requirements, he's gonna get a job, and it's gonna make the life easier.
Damn right, Republicans admitting, that of course is House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, admitting that the top goal for the Republican Party is to put those damn kids to work. How dare they sit on the couch and collect those welfare benefits? Now, of course, he was on Fox News to discuss the debt deal that he and Joe Biden have agreed upon. Now, the real question is, will Congress pass it? And if you think that Joe Biden did a good job in negotiating this deal, you would be mistaken, because Republicans got everything they wanted, and apparently it's still not good enough. They're looking to squeeze a little more in terms of austerity. So let's give you the details on what we know so far. So this deal, as it stands today, does in fact include austerity. It includes work requirements. It even has some goodies, some surprise goodies for Senator Joe Manchin and his energy-related projects. So let's get started with what I think deserves a lot more attention, but has not been getting much attention in its coverage: the pay-go provision. What is that? Well, the bill text applies Congress's pay-as-you-go rule, which requires new spending to be offset by savings elsewhere, to executive actions. That would mean presidential actions like student loan forgiveness would require a huge offset. Do you guys understand what's happening here? So the pay-go provisions, which have already impacted Congress, essentially say, if you want to push for, let's say, an executive action or a piece of legislation, you have to cut spending elsewhere to offset the new spending for this new initiative, this new policy. It is a very convenient provision for Democrats to point to as an excuse for why they do nothing for you. The legislative filibuster, what could we do? In this case, pay-go. The pay-go provisions, what could we do? It's just a convenient excuse, and of course Biden agreed to it because he wants the convenient excuse. So that's just the beginning, tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to get to, Cenk.
Yeah, so every part of the deal helps Republicans, including the Joe Manchin part. Progressives got absolutely nothing out of it, but it's not just about progressives, Democrats, other than Joe Manchin and his dirty energy deal, literally got zero, nothing. So if you're seeing in the press, oh my God, it was a wonderful compromise. There was no compromise at all. As you'll see here, every provision got worse as the negotiations went further. The headlines were so misleading. I thought maybe Biden clawed something back from the Republicans. No, he gave them even more.
Yep.
So, and look, I said from day one that Biden wasn't gonna do anything in the next 2 years. That was super obvious. It was obvious before they even lost the House, but after they lost the House, it was an absolute guarantee. But the media does the thing of like, oh no, you never know. Biden cares a lot about a lot of things. He's trying really hard on a lot of things. He wasn't trying anything on a single issue, right? And so, but as Anna's pointing out here, once you put in pay-go, it's over. Now it's technically, legally, nothing is ever going to get done in these next 2 years that would be part of the Democratic agenda. And Biden, the media will lie to you. And they say, oh, he did a wonderful bipartisan conference. No, Biden is thrilled.
Super thrilled.
Because then he doesn't have to bother pretending to do things he was never gonna do anyway. He can just go campaign for himself, the only person he cares about.
Exactly, so think about this. In Congress, because of pay-go, because of ideological divisions, nothing ever gets done unless it has to do with major handouts to corporate power, right? Like various government grants in the form of the infrastructure bill. It all tends to benefit the corporate world. The only way that we get anything done these days is if the president, a Democratic president, passes something through executive action. And PAYGO basically nixes that. But there is one caveat that I want to make sure you know about. So for instance, the text says that the White House Office of Management and Budget could waive the requirements if necessary for the delivery of essential services or necessary for effective program delivery. So it's just the executive branch's version of the parliamentarian in the Senate, right? In this case, it would be the Office of Management and Budget determining whether or not the executive action is worthy enough to do without the PAYGO provision taking effect. All right, let's move on. There's a lot more to get to, including what we all kind of expected to happen, which was the cap on discretionary spending. So as Time writes, negotiators agreed to cap annual discretionary spending for 2 years, keeping non-defense spending levels flat next year and raising them by 1% in 2025. Okay, that's a fancy way of trying to say they're capping spending when it comes to any government program that benefits ordinary Americans, which is it's a cut, basically, because when you take into account inflation, it ends up being a cut, but they're gonna continue raising spending for defense specifically. That means funding for most domestic programs such as housing, education, and road safety initiatives will stay the same next year at around $936 billion. And again, by staying the same, it's really a spending cut because of inflation. So let me give you some more. The work requirements are, of course, part of this deal. So for those who rely on food stamps or SNAP benefits, which amounts to about $6 a day, they will have to prove that they are working in order to get those benefits, okay? So the deal also raises the age limit until which able-bodied, low-income adults without dependents would be required to work to receive food stamps from 50 to 54 years old. The expanded restrictions would expire in 2030. So if you are a 50-year-old and you're having difficulty getting a new job because of very clear age discrimination that obviously impacts people in their 50s, too bad, between the ages of 50 to 54, you would not be qualified for food stamps, even if you're having difficulty finding a job because of these work requirements. Yep. It's unbelievable. Except with this Democratic Party, very believable.
Okay, quick note on that. All the standard corporate Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House now, said there's no way that they were gonna cut include work requirements. And we told you, no, they will definitely do it. In fact, I made a bet with Emma Vigeland for $100. I was positive that they were gonna do work requirements. Why? Because I know Biden's legislative track history and his presidential track history. He always agrees to spending cuts from Republicans, always, 100% of the time, and always gives them more than any negotiator thought was possible when we first started the negotiations. Of course they're gonna do. So okay, Hakeem Jeffries, let alone the progressives, all said that it would not stand. Looks like it's standing. So who was right and who was wrong? And is Hakeem Jeffries fighting back now? No, zero, nothing.
In fact, just a quick reminder, I believe it was last week, Hakeem Jeffries came out with a statement, all of a sudden changing his tune and saying that the work requirements are reasonable.
Oh, reasonable, all of a sudden, huh? All of a sudden get a call from the donors. Oh, remember, this is not about the debt ceiling. This is a wealth redistribution plan to take from the people who have the least and give it to people who have the most. This doesn't even necessarily reduce the deficit. The whole thing is an utter sham. There are actual facts in the world.
Right.
You know, right-wing media and mainstream media take those facts and pervert them to no end. But there are things in this here. Here, I'll give you another one. So they were the IRS funding. Now that's the one thing I gave the Democrats a ton of credit for, $80 billion over 10 years, not over 1 year, okay? So that they could increase the audits for people making over $400,000 a year. Those are unfortunately, the wealthy cheat on their taxes by far the most. So for every dollar you put into the IRS, you get $6 back in revenue. So that's what the nonpartisan governmental organizations agreed to, right? So what did? They weren't supposed to touch it. Then all of a sudden Biden said, okay, maybe we cut it by 10 billion out of the 80 billion. Okay, so all of a sudden we are touching it. And then the latest deal, I mean, the headlines say, it's amazing, partisan and Biden got an amazing deal. It's now, they cut it by 20 billion.
Yep.
It got twice as bad. Where's the amazing deal part of this? Guys, you can go back and see the earlier articles. They're all archived. First, they said none of this would happen. Then it was 10 billion, now it's 20 billion. There are facts in the world. Mainstream media is lying to you. This is a terrible deal.
And we've been saying from the very beginning that everything Republicans were promoting, everything Republicans were demanding would be provisions that Biden would eventually agree to, and that's exactly what happened. So for instance, when you're cutting 20 billion from the allocated 80 billion to ensure that wealthy tax dodgers are paying their fair share, what do? What does that do? That aids and abets the tax dodgers. That actually means that we're gonna lose revenue because of the tax dodgers doing what they do and dodging their taxes. Democrats were bragging about how the extra funding to the IRS to ensure the wealthy were paying their fair share and were not dodging their taxes, that would actually increase revenue by $200 billion. That's what they were saying.
Now it's gone. So now, by the way,
to some extent, yes.
And the 60 billion left, you're talking about, oh, don't worry, it just goes to bureaucracy. No, it was supposed to go to the audits so that we stop the tax cheats and we get extra revenue in so the deficit is not as bad. Instead, on average, I mean, finish the math on it, 20 billion times 6, according to, again, nonpartisan groups. That means they put $120 billion hole in the deficit. Wait a minute, I thought this was about deficit reduction. It ain't about deficit reduction. They cut from the poor and they give to the rich.
This is a wealth redistribution bill. Cenk mentioned that perfectly earlier today because it redistributes wealth, I mean, what's left of wealth from the bottom to the top, right? This is a way to aid and abet the tax cheats. This is a way to continue increasing defense spending while imposing caps and austerity on any other government program that helps ordinary people. I mean, they're hyper-focused on work requirements for the needy, for people who rely on food stamps for sustenance.
$2 a meal. They're cutting it when it's just $2 a meal. They're like, that's too much for the poor, but we have to give everything to the rich. Now, hold on, we're not done yet. Let me speed through the rest of it for you guys. So again, deficit reduction, my ass. No, the military budget goes up 3%. Why? Because that goes directly to defense contractors who donate to both Republicans and Democrats. This doesn't reduce the debt. It's just to give to the rich and to the donors. And so that part is not deficit reduction. That part sucks. That's exactly what the Republicans want. Now, the one part that the Democrats got, was the Mountain Valley Pipeline. That's the one that Joe Manchin wanted, right? That Anna referred to earlier. Notice progressive priorities like paid family leave that would help you when you have a baby, higher minimum wage, higher wages for all of us, wages get pushed up. None of that is ever carried over. Once it's dead, it's permanently dead.
That's right.
But this son of a bitch, Joe Manchin, has wanted this all along, and Joe Biden broke every promise to progressives, every promise. But to Manchin, oh yes, put it in that one, put it in that one, put it in this one. This is like the 8th bill that they've put it into. And they're gonna sneak it in because it helps fossil fuel companies and donors and sons of bitch conservatives like Joe Manchin. That's who Joe Biden is. The media is 100% lying to you. More cuts, $30 billion from the COVID bill. They had already passed it. The Democrats already did a victory lap. Oh, we got your money. Oh, just kidding. $30 billion back. We got to give it to the rich. We can't have it lying around for the average American. Gone. Every part of this is a disaster. Speeds up energy projects. Does that help the deficit? It has nothing to do with the deficit. Just helps oil and gas companies. Right. Oh, look at that, the donors are helped again. Right. Guys, the facts are obvious.
Exactly, and just to shed more light on the energy projects, basically there used to be, well, currently there are multiple government agencies that need to sign off on new energy related projects because they need to look into how it impacts the environment. I know, believe it or not, there is some oversight in regard to the environmental impact of some of these energy projects. Well, according to this new deal, it would cut out many of those government agencies that would oversee these projects and approve these projects and just rely on one government agency to give the green light. And I guarantee you, in every case, they will give the green light. It just makes it easier to get these energy projects, these fossil fuel projects through. And you're so right, Cenk, in that anytime there is an effort to pass legislation that would help ordinary people, once it fails, it fails. We never hear about it again. But when it comes to projects like Joe Manchin's, Mountain Valley Pipeline, it's never dead. They'll find a way, they'll find any opportunity to sneak these provisions in and get what they want, because as long as it benefits the wealthy, as long as it benefits corporations, as long as it benefits, honestly, members of Congress who stand to profit off of it themselves, they'll get it through. They'll get it through. That's exactly what happens every single time. It's just, I don't understand what Democrats plan on campaigning on. Like, what are they? No, but seriously, like, let's have a real conversation about this, okay? Because when it comes to corporate giveaways, when it comes to aiding and abetting corporate greed, Democrats are right there with Republicans at this point. They're pro-corporate, they're pro-austerity, they're pro-screwing ordinary Americans and redistributing wealth from the bottom to the top. There's no difference at this point when it comes to the pro-corporate policies. So what are they gonna campaign on? The rhetorical stuff they engage in when it comes to cultural issues? And I say rhetorical because take a step back and really think about what they've done for the various disenfranchised communities that they purport to care about. Seriously, ask yourselves, what have Democrats done to improve these people's lives? Nothing. It's just rhetorical garbage. So I don't know, am I supposed to hang my hat on the Democratic Party because of their rhetoric?
No, you know what they're gonna run on, everybody knows it. We're not
Trump is so scary. But,
yeah, we're not Trump.
But okay. Biden has implemented many of the policies or extended many of the policies from the Trump administration.
Corporate tax rates extended.
The immigration policies.
Tax cuts for the rich extended. Immigration policies extended. We can go on and on and on and on. But look, they're gonna go to their two favorite plays. One is we're not as bad as the Republicans.
Except they kind of are.
No, because Trump tried to end democracy. So okay. That's how low the bar is for Democrats now.
So
we
pathetic.
didn't also try to end democracy, vote for us. And then they go to their second trick, which is the most effective trick by far and has worked every time until, and we don't know, it might work again, which is they just get the mainstream media to lie 24/7 on their behalf. Biden's a progressive hero, Biden is FDR 2.0, Biden has accomplished more things than any other president in human history. I mean, these insane, ludicrous lies. And but they get people to believe it because their propaganda is much more sophisticated. I gotta tell you, last two tricks here. One is on student debt. They're like, in fact, the article I read from Time magazine says, Biden refused to retreat on his plan to cancel up to $20,000 of student debt. Refused to retreat, it makes him sound strong. So did he get anything? No, he actually gave more to the Republicans. He says, you know how we were not collecting interest on all the loans because of COVID, et cetera, on the student debt? Okay, Republicans, you win, I'm gonna give you that. We're gonna start collecting the interest again at the end of the summer, okay? Well, how about the refusal to retreat on the 20,000? No, that's irrelevant. The Supreme Court's deciding that, and they're gonna decide it pretty soon. And very likely they're gonna rule against Biden, and Biden knows that. So he now retreats on student debt and gives Republicans more, takes away from students. So later when the Supreme Court rules against him, he's gonna go, oh golly gee, I tried. Mainstream media, tell everybody how epic I am, okay? But God, there was nothing I could do. Oh, did I give away the interest rate forgiveness too? I guess I did, didn't I? Tell them how good a compromise it was. Well, what did Democrats get? Zero, 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 zero. Guys, there are facts in the world. Mainstream media, they actually write it in their articles. Like you go line by line, you cannot find one thing the Democrats got. But the headline says, amazing compromise.
Bipartisanship.
Okay. Bipartisanship, okay, last thing, last trick. So they go, I see it all over social media now, establishment Democrat like fanboys. Like, oh, well, Cenk, how could you say this was a bad deal? The Republicans are complaining about it. Yeah, no crap, Sherlock,
no.
To put it somewhat politely. Guys, this is part of the game. I've covered this for 25 years straight. Republicans demand something outrageous. The Democrats can just ignore it, like use the 14th Amendment. There's 1,000 ways to ignore it, right? Democrats choose to enter a negotiation they don't have to enter into. Then they give away more and more and more and more. And at the end, the Republicans go, not enough. Oh, this is outrageous. And they ask for one more egregious thing. And guess what the Democrats do? And now I will predict it ahead of time, as we always do, and we are almost always right. If the mainstream media is wrong, right, and we're wrong, and we're the radicals, how come we're right on the facts every single time? So I will tell you right now, the Republicans in the House will vote this down. There'll be a panic, and they'll say, oh my God, we gotta do something now. And Biden will give them more.
1,000%.
Because that's what he always does here. In fact, I'll do a fun prediction for what he'll give them. This one's like, because he can give them 1,000 different things, so this one's not guaranteed. But my guess is he'll move the IRS defunding he moved it from 0 to 10 billion to 20 billion. Now I think he'll probably move it to 40 billion and give away half of the IRS funding because they don't want to audit the rich. The one thing I gave them credit on was, it turns out, a sophisticated trick where they were just gonna pull the football later.
Yeah, and look, the GOP's tactics are enviable. They're never satisfied. They always demand more, and Democrats, because of the fact that they're bribed by the same people, are always willing to give more. And so that's exactly how this is gonna play out. I have no doubt about it. And I'm just curious, all of the people celebrating Biden right now on Twitter or social media, have they bothered to read anything?
No.
Have they sat down? Have they had the discipline to just sit down and actually read the details of the deal?
If they have, show me one thing Democrats got out of it.
No,
That's
seriously,
a challenge.
that's such a great question. Seriously, maybe we're missing it. What did Biden and the Democrats get out of this deal?
There are facts in the world. They got nothing. Mainstream media wants to present alternative facts to you, just like Fox News does.
You know what? I apologize. There is one thing Biden got. He made a deal with the devil, specifically because he wants to focus on campaigning for re-election. So he, because of this deal, if it gets through, will not have to worry about raising the debt ceiling next year as he's campaigning.
Yeah, but that's still nothing. Because he doesn't have to worry about it by just using the 14th Amendment. And we were done with this conversation months ago.
No, you're not getting it. I know it's nothing, but it's something that Biden wants for his own purposes, for his own political aspirations, for his own narcissism.
No, you're absolutely right. And if we're framing it that way, then Biden also got a lot of things he wanted. He wanted to cut from the poor and the middle class, and he wanted to give it to the rich. That's what he's done his entire career. He also got that. He wanted an excuse to do nothing the next 2 years. He got that, and he got an excuse to do nonstop campaigning. So Biden got a lot of wins. The Republicans got a lot of wins, but the American people got screwed. And who told you that? Certainly not the mainstream media. They told you Joe Scarborough was beside himself, ecstatic for how much he loves this deal.
And we're gonna talk about that when we come back from the break. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
Obrador.
Back on TYT, let's start with YouTube members today. Lifetime Supply of Dragons became a member, first of all, so that's awesome, thank you. And then wrote, an after SCOTUS overrules student debt relief, will it mean that Biden has effectively done nothing for the working class over 4, and then in brackets, likely 8 years? No, it's not gonna be 8 years. I cannot imagine a world in which Joe Biden beats any Republican. Like Joe Schmo, street cleaner out of Alabama can beat Joe Biden. He's at 35%. He has nearly 0% chance of winning. This is just a matter of fact. It's not a matter of opinions and feelings and policies, okay? An incumbent under 50% has a very low chance of winning. An incumbent under 40% has a near 0% chance of winning, okay? So anyways, is he gonna get us anything? No, look, we're fair. He did a couple of things right. He got us out of Afghanistan and did it relatively quickly. Some of the IRS funding for audits still remains. And there was the original COVID relief deal. Yes, they clawed back 30 billion, but there was some. Would the Republicans have passed the COVID relief bill? Yes, they probably would have, right? And so they wouldn't have done the IRS thing. We got some judges, but not as many as we wanted because Feinstein wouldn't show up to work. So did we get the usual crumbs? Yes, we got a couple of crumbs off the corporate table. Was he a legendary, amazing, historic president who got all these bills done that no one else could get? I swear to God, they say that on cable. I see it with my own eyes. I'm like, are you guys insane? And they do. They live in a complete different reality. Michael Malbon writes in, NPR is cheerleading this reasonable deal.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
Because NPR used to be a bastion of non-corporate media, and that's why people originally loved NPR, and they did some great pieces. Now they also get funding from corporations, and they also serve corporations. So now this is a great deal. It's just a lie. Everyone at NPR that says this is a good deal for Democrats, is a fair deal, a reasonable deal, is a liar. Liar. Democrats got 0. How could that be reasonable? Soul 8 says, love you guys at TYT, love the whole team. Everyone from Cenk and Anna, the techies, the researchers, the cleaners, all of you, thank you. I get to see this fantastic news. We get to see it, and everybody gets to see it because of you. The members make this possible, thank you. Joe Babcock says, here's an offset, cut the military budget. Easiest thing in the world is $100 billion in waste there at a bare minimum that they can't even account for. Easiest cut in the world. They're not only not cutting it, they're adding 3% to it. Why? Because they all have donors that are defense contractors. These are obvious, overwhelmingly clear points you never see in mainstream media. Why? Why wouldn't they say, hey, look at all the defense contractors getting trillions of dollars while we pretend that there's a fight over the deficit? Why wouldn't a single national media reporter say that? Because they're all part of the same game. Michael Malbaum on a lighter point says, my grandpa lived to be 101. He swore by a bowl of Kellogg's Product 19 every morning. Well, everybody's got a different trick, but God bless your grandpa. Art Guy writes in our member section on the website, I'm sure the Dems will act super confused as to why people don't want to vote for them in the next election. 100% right. And so will all the media. It's just Jess says the corporate Dems suck. They never help regular American people, and we all suffer because of them. Also totally true. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Raiku, Sensei, Scotty, Furnace, and Guy on board. They all just became TYT by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. Aimster and Vicky Gray also gifted 5 Young Turks memberships because they're American heroes and we love them for it. Casper.
All right. Preliminary reporting on the deal that President Joe Biden made with Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on the debt ceiling indicate that Democrats are giving everything away and Republicans will get everything they want, including spending caps on government programs that help ordinary Americans, a continued increase in defense spending, and of course, a special project for Joe Manchin that has to do with a natural gas pipeline that would run through his state. Now, while objective people can look at the deal and look at the provisions and clearly understand that Republicans are getting everything they want, that's not what you're gonna hear from corporate media, including Joe Scarborough over at MSNBC. Here's what he had to say about it.
You actually have in Joe Biden and here Kevin McCarthy, but you have a Democratic president and Republican Senate and now House that have worked together in pretty historic ways over the past year and a half, getting bipartisan legislation. And let's look at Kevin McCarthy really quickly here. This is Kevin McCarthy, who many said for quite some time, for good reason, were concerned that he was going to go sideways on supporting freedom fighters in Ukraine. We heard him shut down that Russian reporter, said get out of their country, stop killing their children, stop committing war crimes. And here, you know, the nation's economy was on the line, and you know he behaved responsibly. Biden behaved responsibly. They were grown-ups.
Now, to be fair to Joe Scarborough, who is a Republican and was a Republican when he was in elected office, he loves austerity and he loves spending cuts that impact ordinary Americans. He loves the idea of work requirements for people who are so needy that they need to rely on SNAP benefits, a whopping $6 a day in order to be able to feed themselves. So of course he looks at this deal and says, like, thank God the world economy and my precious stock portfolio isn't about to crash because they failed to reach a deal on the debt ceiling. But this obsession with bipartisanship is such a sham because it's never really about genuine compromise and bipartisanship. It's really about Democrats being good boys and girls and handing over all the cookies to their Republican counterparts.
Okay, guys, the mainstream media your whole life, and every one of you will agree to this because it's obvious and it's not controversial, has told you that bipartisanship is a great thing. They celebrate bipartisanship every time it happens. You see it in the headlines. Amazing bipartisan deal. They never say like terrible bipartisan deal, unfortunate bipartisan deal. I've never seen it in my whole life, neither have any of you, right? But wait, why is bipartisan by definition a good thing? What if one side wanted to cut taxes by only for the rich by $1 trillion, and the other side wanted to cut it by $2 trillion? And they reached a bipartisan agreement to cut it, take it from the middle class and give $1.5 trillion to the rich. Bipartisan compromise. But wait, why is that a good thing? Nobody agreed to that. In fact, 76% of Americans want tax increases for the rich. So why is bipartisan by definition good? It isn't. In fact, what if both sides are wrong? Then you're picking and I talk about this in my book, Justice is Coming. And guys, these things are so obvious, yet you've never heard it your whole life in the media. What if both sides are wrong? So now we're picking a neutral midpoint between two wrong sides and then celebrating it. No, the question is, objectively, what is good and what isn't? Well, how can you tell what's good? Well, one thing to do is you can look at the polling. Don't trust me, don't trust pundits, don't trust any of those guys. Just say, hey, what do the American people want? For example, 84% of Americans want paid family leave. Hey, is it in there? I mean, that's a big, 84% in a democracy. It's obviously in there, right? Oh, no, it's not. No, you never get what you want. Are the things that are in those provisions popular? No, none of them are popular. They don't want the anti-climate change stuff that's in there. They don't want the American people don't want the cuts. We can show you the polls on each one of them. They're doing a deeply unpopular bill, but the media turns it around and goes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wonderful because it's bipartisan.
It's the power of propaganda.
Bingo.
And so if you have a one-sided pro-corporate media diet, you're going to have the impression that this was an excellent negotiation. Joe Biden's a real deal maker here, right? I mean, he's so incredible with how he was willing to work and compromise with Republicans, but understand that Republicans did not compromise with Democrats at all. Like, again, everything that the GOP wanted, they got in the first round of negotiations. And now you have the more extreme elements of the Republican Party engaging in the theater, complaining about how they allegedly didn't get everything they want, because after the first round of whatever happens in Congress happens this week, right, where they vote on it, if it doesn't get passed, well then Democrats will turn around and give Republicans more cookies.
Guaranteed. There's a 0% chance that this is the last deal. Biden will give them more. You can write it down in stone, okay? I've seen this movie 200 times. By the way, so is every reporter that lies in their coverage and goes, oh wow, they have a deal, it's done. Oh, the Republicans are complaining about it. I guess it must be so good for Democrats. You goddamn liars.
In fact, why don't we go to the next video? This is from the same segment that Joe Scarborough was commenting in. And in this portion of the segment, they talk about the disdain that the GOP has in regard to this deal. Let's watch.
It does look like, I say this a little bit hesitantly because we don't know where it's headed, in the next 24 hours or 36 hours, that they will get to 218 to get this thing passed.
Yeah, the House starts bringing it up today, vote tentatively slated for tomorrow. We're not quite sure when the Senate will take it up, probably the day or two after that. Whip operations in both parties feel pretty confident that they'll get there. To your point, yes, there are extremists on the right who have made it very clear they want nothing to do with this, and they're throwing bombs left and right on Twitter. Press conferences saying this is a disaster of a deal. It's a Democratic blank check was among the rhetoric used. I believe also turd sandwich was tossed about. And we've got some progressives on the left who are also expressing some concerns, saying that they don't like this bill either. But the White House sort of expected that would be the case.
And look, before you comment on that, Cenk, I have to go to Pramila Jayapal, who's the head of the Progressive Caucus in the House. Her tepid response tells you everything you need to know about the lopsided power imbalance that we have in Congress right now when it comes to these issues. Let's watch.
This is saying to poor people and people who are in need that we don't trust them. And the average amount of assistance for SNAP, for example, is $6 a day, Jake. I mean, we're talking about $6 a day. And I think it is really unfortunate that the president opened the door to this. And while at the end of the day, perhaps this will, because of the exemptions, perhaps it will be okay. I can't commit to that. I really don't know.
Did you get it? Did you hear that last part?
Yeah.
Did you hear that last part?
I did. Yeah. All right. So she says like, this is unacceptable. Okay, great. Then no problem. Don't accept it.
Right.
Why don't you just vote against it?
Right.
You're not gonna do that, are you, Jayapal? Because God forbid you should ever use your power. The progressives in Congress have given away all their power because they refuse to ever vote no. Whatever Biden says, they do. They all kneel. They all bow immediately. You just said it was unacceptable. So why are you accepting it? And you've been saying it's unacceptable the whole time. Every provision you said was unacceptable. But at the end, what are you gonna do, Pramila Jayapal? You're gonna accept it. And guys, look, the only way that they avoid the Republicans getting even more out of the deal, which Biden wants them to do, right? He wants there to be more drama, more et cetera, is that they're gonna get a couple of Republicans that are with McCarthy and a whole bunch of Democrats to vote together, right? So they're gonna need the progressives, and if they don't need the progressives, then the progressives will do a show of like huffing and puffing and vote no, full well knowing they don't need the votes, okay?
Right, so
that's how this theater is played.
Real quick, so look, let's be fair. You're asking, well, what do you plan on doing, Pramila Jayapal? Well, this is all we know so far, and I don't think it's gonna extend any further than this. Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal says the Congressional Progressive Caucus is taking a formal whip count.
Ooh.
They're doing a formal whip count, everyone, to determine whether or not the CPC will take an official position on the debt ceiling bill.
You're wondering if you should take a progressive position on them cutting $30 billion from the COVID funding relief, $20 billion from the IRS budget, giving Manchin the dirty pipeline deal, extending the energy deals, drilling all over the country and expediting it.
Right.
We get absolutely nothing. They cut spending, they pay go on executive action. We get literally nothing out of it. The Republicans get everything they wanted and then some out of it. And you're considering whether you're gonna say progressives are theoretically against it. Wow, I didn't know you were gonna be that tough, man.
Ooh.
Hats off, hats off. Okay, and Joe Scarborough likes the deal. You know why? Because Joe Scarborough is a Republican.
Yep.
He's a former Republican congressman, but he never said he left the Republican Party. He just doesn't like Trump. By the way, he used to be great friends with Trump, including when the first time Trump was running for office. Joe Scarborough hasn't changed his positions.
Right.
He's a Republican, but MSNBC has gone so right wing that Republican looks at home at MSNBC. In Washington, a Republican is the idea of a liberal. Okay.
I mean, the Democratic Party has now become the party of disaffected Republicans, right?
100%.
Republicans who hate Trump, who are horrified at what the Republican Party has turned into. But understand that these are individuals who were Republicans under the George W. Bush administration. I became passionate about politics because I became politicized during Bush's administration. And let me just tell you something, I absolutely hated Bush's administration and the Republicans that were within that administration. So to turn around and now say, I'm gonna continue to support the Democratic Party as they have welcomed Bush-era Republicans into the party with open arms and are much more receptive to them as opposed to their own voters, as opposed to progressive policies. I mean, it's not a party that speaks to me at all at this point, at all.
Yeah, the only thing they have going for them and the only thing they ever say is Republicans are worse. They hate LGBTQ people, they're passing terrible discriminatory laws.
I know, but what have Democrats done in response to that?
I know. They've done nothing in response to that or in response to anything, right? But people in Washington, aided and abetted by mainstream media, genuinely believe that Democrats doing absolutely nothing for their voters and constantly bragging about how they only gave the Republicans half of what they want every single time is some sort of like heroic action. It isn't. It's less than the bare minimum. So as they lie to you, and by the way, our members are writing in right now saying, oh yeah, I saw it on MSNBC. They're saying this is the greatest deal ever. This is an amazing compromise. This is wonderful, right? It's so reasonable. Just ask those lying anchors, what did the Democrats get? And saying, well, they stopped the Republicans from complaining about the debt ceiling is not a thing. You could just use the 14th Amendment and be done with it. There's nothing they could do is just a grotesque lie. Lie after lie after lie as they give away the store to Republicans, and the mainstream media cheers on and pretends that the Democrats are heroes. Yes, the Republicans are terrible. No, that does not mean the Democrats are angels and wonderful and actually fight back and win anything. All they ever do is give more and more to the Republicans. They have the same exact donors, which coincidentally also happen to be the advertisers for corporate media. Funny, they all get paid by the same people who just got yet another win in this deal, and they took it off of our hide, the average Americans. They redistributed that wealth, and all the people they fund just told you the wonderful little bedtime story about how it was a great bipartisan deal. And you should be really happy that they took your money and gave it to the rich again.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to do a little international news, although it does have some influence from domestic policy or people in America. So we'll talk about what's happening in Uganda and how Ted Cruz, of all people, defending members of the LGBTQ community has led to a lot of backlash toward him. That and more coming up. Don't miss it.
Obrador.
All right, here we go. Let's go to our members on our website. Repcat, the political cat boy, says, oh no, not Jayapal again. I'm so over this. We need an actual progressive caucus with an actual leader. Now, if you're wondering why did they put in the most compliant person as the leader of the progressive caucus, because they wanted the most compliant person to be the so-called leader of the progressive caucus. So the progressives could say within the Democratic Party, golly gee, there was nothing we could do. We had to agree with the corporate Democrats. Golly gee, and if you want golly gee, Jayapal is the perfect person for you. Nothing is an accident. If they wanted, they could put a fire breather in there. Does it look like they did? No. They put the weakest person in the entire caucus there. Monica said, hello, TYT folks. 20 minutes in and now I'm totally depressed. It's so hard to keep any amount of optimism, the downside of knowing the truth. Yes, Monica, I hear you. But hang in there. I'll just say this. There should be an open rebellion very soon, okay? This is, I can't stomach this. I can't stomach a world where there is no hope. So we're going to create hope, all right? So stay tuned. Alex says, from my reading of the debt deal only raises the limit through January 1st, 2025. Your reading is correct. So even if the Dems win the House, the Republicans can refuse to raise the debt limit in a lame duck and crash the economy out of spite before a new Congress is sworn in on January 3rd. Yep. And by the way, do you think the Republicans might do the same trick again? Of course, okay? And let alone if they keep the House or win the Senate, which is also very likely because they're running against soft, weak Democrats. And so the only way to avoid any of that is to elect a progressive as president. Because a progressive will say, certainly if we have anything to do with it, no, 14th Amendment, I'm done with it. And if you don't like that, that's okay. It's okay, you can fight that in the courts all you like, fight it to your heart's content. And I want the Supreme Court to say that the original meaning of the amendments don't mean anything. Tell me that the plain language of the Constitution is meaningless, Clarence Thomas. I dare you, okay? So anyways, okay, but then you come back to me and go, okay, well now I'm gonna hold you hostage and I'm not gonna lift the debt ceiling. Go for it. Just go for it. Go for it. Do it. I dare you. You know what I would do politically? Slap them across the face and go, are you gonna sit there and bleed all day or are you gonna make sure that we don't lift the debt ceiling? Go ahead, I dare you. All your donors will crucify you and you know it. Now heal. Okay, that's how you play hardball politics. A Democrat would never do that. Guys, remember, the Democrats weren't like this. I talk about it in Justice is Coming. FDR was a lion.
He was.
He said, I welcome their hatred and I'm gonna fight their lust for greed and I'm gonna dominate them. That's literally what he said.
So was LBJ.
LBJ was a lion. And guess what happened? Hey, look at that. They passed bill after bill after bill. It turns out it can be done. Okay. Dragonfire Mathematician X says, the completely predictable response from the rich centrist favorite morning show, tell them how special they are and how progressives need to stop whining like children and take their medicine, morning blow. That's what he does every time. Oh, they're so left wing on MSNBC. Back on TYT Chang and Anna with you guys. Metal Turtle 571 gifted 5 subs on Twitch. Deeply appreciated. Really, you're the best. And John W just became a member on YouTube. Member section, we appreciate that too. I'm just gonna read one comment from YouTube members. Not that Donald wrote in, lifelong Dem here, and I say to Anna, amen, sister. So look, anybody who watches this show just looks up our facts and go, oh my God, they're totally right. Oh my God, they predict things ahead of time because it's so easy and obvious. Oh my God, everyone else in media is lying. That's exactly right. Okay, and you could verify it every time. We want you to verify it every time because we actually have facts. All right, let's do more news.
Well, let's do some international news. Let's take a trip to Uganda.
Same-sex relations were already illegal in Uganda, but the new law goes much further, including death sentences for, quote, aggravated homosexuality and 20 years in jail for promoting homosexuality.
This is policy that has been pushed in Uganda for over a decade at this point, and the president of Uganda has signed a new anti-LGBT law that imposes life sentences in prison and even the death penalty for members of the LGBTQ community. So it's known as the Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023, and it punishes with death. Okay, with death, those found guilty of aggravated homosexuality, a category broadly defined by legislators to include offenses that range from having gay sex with a minor to seducing someone through misrepresentation or undue influence. So in other words, the provisions in this anti-LGBT law are pretty broad and can be interpreted in such a way that people could be sentenced to death just by being who they are. Now, the law also imposes life imprisonment for anyone found to have performed a sexual act with a person of the same gender, and up to 7 years in prison for an attempt to commit the offense of homosexuality. So I wanna just be very clear about something. Much like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, what they'll do is they'll point to something that sounds reasonable to justify the law. Now, to be clear, I'm against the death penalty in all cases. I don't think state-sponsored murder makes sense when you're trying to send a message against murder in the United States, right? In this case, they would implement the death penalty for someone who is gay and engages in a sexual act with a minor. So they'll point to that and say, doesn't that sound reasonable? I mean, they're raping minors. But no. Understand that that is one tiny portion of this. And what it's really about is outlawing gay people in Uganda.
Okay, 2 things about that. Number one, the right wing in America is already saying what Anna said.
That's right. Yep.
And we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. They're all like, whoa, what's the big deal? They're just killing child rapists. No, first of all, they're not killing child rapists if it's a man who rapes a little girl. That's not in the bill.
That's not in the bill, right?
Okay. Only if it's same sex is there a death penalty. If you rape a little girl and you're a man, no problem. Maybe there's a different law, but it's not an execution law and it's not this law. So be clear about what they're saying. Second of all, you're also getting the death penalty if you have sex with just normal gay sex in any way because of a misrepresentation. That's the death penalty because of a How many people have done a misrepresentation when they're hooking up? Well, I took the picture this way instead of this way. It makes me look skinnier. Misrepresentation, death penalty. Undue influence, what the hell does that mean?
I mean, it's overly broad, and it's overly broad on purpose, much like the law in Florida. Now, the law in Florida is not as extreme. It doesn't implement the death penalty toward individuals who just happen to be gay. But in this case, the punishment is far more extreme, and the law is written in a broad way, I believe, on purpose. Now, it's important to understand the forces behind the legislation because it's bad enough if we're talking about a conservative party in another country that has been pushing for this legislation, but understand that there has been a lot of influence by fundamentalists in the United States. They have been pushing for this law in Uganda for a long time, and the people behind it, the American evangelical group behind it, is known as the Fellowship. We've talked about them before. It's the same group of fundamentalists who are behind the National Prayer Breakfast. Keep that in mind, okay? Because the National Prayer Breakfast, which happens every year, also seems to attract some Democrats. Democrats participate in this, including President Joe Biden. In fact, in 2023, this year, he gave a speech at the National Prayer Breakfast, even after all the reporting came out in regard to the Fellowship and what they've been pushing for in countries like Uganda. But nonetheless, we're gonna give you Biden's protests in regard to this law in just a moment. Here's some more details on the Fellowship Project though. The Fellowship Foundation, which is a secretive US religious group whose Ugandan associate, David Bahati, wrote Uganda's infamous Kill the Gays bill, is the biggest spender in Africa. Between 2008 and 2018, in just 10 years, the group spent more than $20 million in Uganda alone to push for legislation like this disgusting anti-LGBT bill. With that said, Joe Biden reacted to what Uganda just passed, what the president just signed, this anti-LGBT bill, and here's what he says. This shameful act is the latest development in an alarming trend of human rights abuses and corruption in Uganda. I have directed my National Security Council to evaluate the implications of this bill on all aspects of US engagement with Uganda. So some reporters have taken that to mean that he might consider sanctions against Uganda because that's gonna help the situation. I don't think he's even really considering that, to be clear. There's no real indication that he's considering that. But I don't know, maybe take a step back and consider who you're rubbing shoulders with, Joe Biden, because the same people that invited you to the National Prayer Breakfast, the same event that you spoke at this year, those are the same people who have been pushing this bill in Uganda for over a decade. They got what they wanted. Why are you associating yourself with them?
100%. Look, I gotta be honest, we did great reporting on this. The TYT investigative reporting team was all over the National Prayer Breakfast. In fact, we did such good reporting, it embarrassed a lot of Democrats from pulling out all the way to Nancy Pelosi, which is amazing, right? But one remains, the stalwart, the most conservative Democrat, Joe Biden. Nope, he's gonna go to that National Prayer Breakfast, even though they're the ones that pushed this bill to execute gay people in Uganda. He's gonna go and go and go and go. So he can say to the Republicans, I'm just as conservative Christian as you guys are.
But
and then he'll pretend that he cares about the LGBTQ community in Uganda. Well, you wouldn't go to this monstrous event if you cared at all. So look, guys, we'll put links down below, tyt.com/reports. You see all of our stories on it, amazing reporting. And we did a petition as well. That petition is still live right now. Go sign it, tyt.com/petitions for Democrats to boycott the National Prayer Breakfast. The reason why it's important is then that group, the Fellowship, takes it to other countries like Uganda.
Yes.
And brags that everyone in America agrees, because here's Democratic President Joe Biden.
Exactly.
And he agrees too. And it gives a misleading impression in Uganda that the whole country, that America is totally in favor of this bill.
Okay, so look, I'm gonna use these examples to reiterate a point that I've been making on the show, and sometimes I make it broadly without giving specifics in regard to what I mean. When I say that Democrats only seem to, like the one saving grace for Democrats is this point, where you have a system in which both parties are corrupted with corporate money. The only saving grace has been, well, they're better on cultural issues, right? They're better on cultural issues, but are they? Okay, maybe rhetorically they're better on cultural issues, but when push comes to shove, when you look at their actions, I mean, I think their actions speak for themselves. When they had a supermajority and had the ability to codify reproductive rights, they failed to do so. They didn't think it was that important, okay? After the Supreme Court reverses Roe v. Wade, you have corporate Democrats rally in support for Henry Cuellar in Texas, okay? An anti-reproductive rights Democrat. They would rather get him reelected than ensure that his progressive challenger gets elected instead. The progressive challenger who actually values reproductive rights. That's what the mainstream Democratic Party did after the reversal of Roe v. Wade. Okay, fine.
Okay, but on this issue, real quick, to your point, Anna, the Republicans have now proposed hundreds of anti-LGBTQ bills across the country, so they're awful. Did the Democrats manage to fight them in the red states and win? No.
Why would they?
All of them passed, right? And then what did the Democrats always do? They almost sing now. They've got a Broadway special. There was nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do. No matter what the Republicans propose, they always win. And the Democrats and the media sing together now, everybody on stage. There was nothing they could do. There was nothing they could do. And now in Uganda, they're gonna kill gay people. They're gonna put them in prison for 7 years for maybe hitting on someone. You go to prison for life if you actually have gay sex. Prison for life. And what is Joe Biden doing? Oh, I'm gonna go help the fellowship do it, but then later I'm gonna put out a statement that I am kind of against it, and I might do something about it later, like go to the National Prayer Breakfast again.
I am sick of statements from Democrats. I don't care about their rhetoric, okay? Their rhetoric being better than the rhetoric that we hear from Republicans means nothing if they don't put action behind the rhetoric that they engage in. And they don't put action behind it. They always find convenient excuses, and I'm not really interested in their excuses. Even with Democrats having a majority in Congress, having control of the levers of power, they somehow miraculously find excuses for why they can't get anything done. It's just incredibly frustrating. And I want Democrats to explain to me what they plan to run on, what they plan to campaign on. I get it, they're gonna campaign on, ooh, Trump is very dangerous. Okay, but think about your voting base. Think about voters in general. Have their lives improved since that exchange of power occurred, since Biden came into power? Have their lives improved?
No, Anna, but there was nothing they could do.
Okay, well,
there was nothing they could do. Elect Democrats and Republicans will only get half of what they want. Wow, what a compelling message. Guys, we're constructive every time. I'll tell you super quick what Biden could have done was a simple thing, tiny thing, wouldn't have cost him anything. Hey, National Prayer Breakfast, I am definitely not coming next year unless you go call off your dogs in Uganda. You keep sending the fellowship guys to Uganda and telling them that you want them to pass that bill. You do it one more time and I'm gonna burn that National Prayer Breakfast to the ground and I'm gonna make sure no Democrat ever goes to it. Believe me, tuck their tail between their legs and they come scurrying, and maybe we save some lives in Uganda. Did Biden do that? Nope, there's always something they could do. They're lying when they say there's nothing they could do.
Well, let's get to the Ted Cruz angle to this story because this was unexpected and pretty fascinating. In response to Uganda now passing one of the most horrendous anti-LGBTQ bills, which would impose the death penalty for some members of that community, Ted Cruz, of all people, a Republican, a conservative Republican at that, has come out to condemn the new law. This is what he wrote via Twitter. The Uganda law is horrific and wrong. Any law criminalizing homosexuality or imposing the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality is grotesque and an abomination. All civilized nations should join together in condemning this human rights abuse. Hashtag LGBTQ. I don't know what happened to Ted Cruz. This is not a tweet I would expect from him. Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, actions matter. So credit where credit is due, no problem. I don't care why he did it as long as he's doing the right thing. But if you want to know why he did it, there's two reasons why. One, Republicans have gay donors. And those donors get upset about stuff like this. And so that's why some of the politicians are more reasonable than their base. as you're about to see on issues like this. The second reason is he's got polling saying that he's in a lot of trouble in Texas. So that's why he did a piece with NBC News a month ago saying about, oh no, I'm a real moderate. Ted Cruz bragging about being a moderate?
That's amazing.
A moderate.
He got elected as a Tea Party conservative, meaning further right than the mainstream Republican Party at the time.
And his big calling card now is no one licks Donald Trump's boots better than he does. Okay, his tongue is coarse with how much he's licked those boots.
Absolutely.
But all of a sudden, you get some bad polling in Texas and you want to protect the LGBTQ community. Funny how that turns out, but I'll take it. But apparently his base won't.
Well, okay, so there's his base, which he got plenty of backlash on Twitter from ordinary people after he made this statement. But let's focus on, people who aren't so ordinary, including Jenna Ellis, who was Trump's lawyer, the same person who tried to help him overturn the election, this lunatic. Okay, well, what did she have to say about it? Quote, "You can condemn a law that imposes the death penalty for homosexuality without being pro-LGBTQ. Like Bud Light, you should have just said nothing, not this."
So protecting gay people's lives, like even saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill them, maybe we shouldn't murder them, a bridge too far, a bridge too far. How dare you speak out verbally and say they shouldn't be murdered?
Now, she must have gotten a little bit of backlash after she made that statement, and she responded to the backlash by saying, "For the commenters, I stand with Uganda on this because the definition of aggravated homosexuality subject to the death penalty is raping children." By the way, that's not true, and Ted Cruz is about to debunk her, but hold on. She also continues to say, why would Cruz be against this anyway? And what does this have to do with LGBTQ? Absolutely stupid comment. Well, he responds to her, quote tweets her, and says, "Jenna, not sure why you're defending this barbaric Ugandan law. It imposes life imprisonment for consenting adults who engage in gay sex. That's ridiculous. You or I may or may not agree with their choices, but consenting adults should not go to jail for what they do in their own bedrooms." Which, I mean, obviously I agree with that wholeheartedly. Your explanation for what's likely motivating that comment from Ted Cruz makes a lot of sense. But nonetheless, I'm glad he's making that point.
Yeah, absolutely. But Jenna Ellis is not alone. Almost every tweet I read in social media from right-wingers, whether it was attacking Ted Cruz, and there were tons of them attacking Ted Cruz, or anywhere else in social media was like, what's the big deal, man? One, they go with the same lie, oh, it's just for a death penalty for raping children. No, straight people who rape children don't get the death penalty in Uganda. And the law is way broader than that on the execution side, let alone what Ted Cruz is saying. Even if you put aside the execution side, you get life imprisonment for just having making a lifestyle choice on who you would like to go to bed with.
Right, so let me be clear on what the death penalty provision of the law says. The Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2023 punishes with death those found guilty of aggravated homosexuality, a category broadly defined by legislators to include offenses that range from having sex with a minor to seducing someone through misrepresentation or undue influence. It is purposely broad. It is purposely broad to be able to implement this law toward members of the gay community and potentially sentence them to the death penalty.
So if all they were doing was misquoting the law, that would be very normal for right-wingers because their leaders like Jenna Ellis will lie to them and pretend that's what this law is about, right? But they don't stop there. Then I saw tons and tons and tons and tons of comments saying, what's the big deal, man? Why don't you leave Uganda alone? You should be focusing on America. Uganda, let them run their own business.
Oh yeah, no, by the way, okay, I agree. Then the American evangelicals who spent tens of millions of dollars and lobbied for this bill in Uganda shouldn't have done that, right? This is a law that was heavily influenced by fundamentalists here in the United States.
Yeah, and they say, look, at least Uganda is doing something about morality issues. We should be doing that here. Okay, so tell me you're not against LGBTQ people. Come on, get out. Why are you bothering to lie about it? Why are you bothering to lie about it? All right, we all know who you are. So right-wingers, don't ever, ever, ever say that you're, look, but if you're like Ted Cruz And I mean, this is the lowest bar ever. Hey, I don't want to execute gay people, but I'll take it. But if you're in the camp that says these outrageous things, you don't get to say that you're fair or that you believe in equal rights. You don't. You're a monster and you hate these people. All right, let me ask you one last thing. Let's bring up the Tesla pictures. I saw this over the weekend at the mall. This is a place where they're selling Teslas. And they have the Pride flag. They have the Pride as a thing on Tesla, etc. I said, that's wonderful, that's great, no problem. I was there with my kids saw it. Kids get into this car, kids see this car.
Were they scandalized?
They were not scandalized. But if you're a right winger, wait, why aren't you scandalized? I thought it was about protecting the children. They can't ever see a message like that. Didn't you guys just attack Target? Because the children would see a message about pride.
Are you saying Tesla should be next?
I'm not, look, I don't believe in this insanity, but apparently you guys do. Why isn't Elon Musk canceled? Elon Musk spreading the message to children, you got to my children. My poor children at the mall had to see that maybe everyone should have equal rights. That maybe we should be fair to everyone and decent to everyone. And I know right wingers, you despise that idea. Why aren't you canceling Elon Musk? Oh, that's right, because you guys are hypocrites and you don't mean anything you say.
This is just endless hellscape that we're living in. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including, what are we gonna talk about next, Cenk? Costco. I love Costco. You should love Costco too, and I'll explain why when we come back.
We're gonna explain why.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was too strong coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at toostrongcoffee.com/TYT.
300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world. We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 20 billion views. Damn. All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Billy B. Taylor. What do you know? Billy says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce 1971 saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Here's what we do. We go beyond the headline. We are willing to engage in transparent conversations with those who do not think like me. We also make sure that you know what's happening not only nationally, but in your local area. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Cool news, shopdyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
All right, back on TYT, Jen Canana with you guys. Also Chris Swank, he just became a member. He hit the join button below the video on YouTube. We appreciate that. And you guys can also go to tyt.com/join. By the way, you could also upgrade through the join button, and that helps tremendously, as does gifting membership, which is what Samantha Toder did. She gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. Some shout outs from people who got those a little bit later in the show. We appreciate you guys. Casper.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Costco, which seems to be the only American corporation that pushes back against any pressure to be bad. So let's talk about it. Despite growing pressure to take advantage of the inflation narrative and price gouge customers, Costco is refusing to raise their prices or their member fees. So this is according to reporting by More Perfect Union. These companies that are publicly traded, Costco happens to be one of them, have these quarterly earnings calls with their investors. And during these earnings calls, you kind of hear the back and forth in regard to what the investors want, what the shareholders want the company to do. And more often than not, the executives at the company or corporation oblige because they want to maximize profits and provide a nice return to their shareholders. That's not the case with Costco, which is pretty shocking. So there had been some reporting earlier this year in regard to Costco potentially increasing their membership fees, but it looks like they're holding off on that and they're pushing back against bank analysts who are urging them to do so. So Costco's CFO, Richard Galanti, said, "We've got enough leverage out there to drive business, and we feel that it's incumbent upon us to be that beacon of light to our members in terms of holding them for right now." So what he's saying there is, look, we don't really need to increase our prices, and we certainly don't need to increase our membership fees as it stands right now. We're doing well, we're turning a very nice profit. In fact, More Perfect Union sheds light on that as well. Costco has absorbed 2 to 3% of inflation across most items. Its sales last quarter increased by 6.5% to a whopping $54.24 billion. So they're doing well, and that's the point that the CFO is trying to make here. Why mess with something that is working? And to be clear, even though I live in a 2-person household, I went from shopping at a regular grocery store to now shopping at Costco because it's just more cost effective, it's more affordable. And I also want to show support for what Costco is doing here and pushing back against what the bankers want, what the shareholders want, in order to do right by the customers. And obviously the customers appreciate it because their sales have increased significantly.
So, first of all, Costco is not a sponsor, just to be clear.
No.
And we just try to highlight companies that are in what is now being called the good economy. Companies that are actually trying to do a little bit of good in the world. And so I would say that Young Turks is part of that, TYT as a network is, and Costco is. And it's guys, it's not that high a bar, right? So like in this particular case with food prices, everyone else raised their prices and way past inflation. And on their earnings calls, and we reported this earlier on TYT, they would brag about how it turns out the customers could absorb the increases, so we just decided to make more profit. I mean, they brag about it, that it wasn't inflation. They chose to do it on purpose, okay? So the reason we celebrate the Costco's of the world is because, number one, it turns out you can choose to do the right thing. They keep telling you, oh no, there's nothing they could do. There's nothing. Turns out there is something they could do, right? They could actually be a good company and actually care about their customers. By the way, they also care about their employees. They're great to their employees, unlike a lot of these other companies. So we want you to know that there are options out there. Don't believe the hype. Okay, and the second reason is just to highlight, apparently it wasn't inflation, was it, that drove all the prices up? It was the decision to price gouge by every other company.
Guys, I mean, it is so brazen that at this point, as far as we've seen, even the Wall Street Journal has published 2 separate pieces shedding light on the corporate greed that's really behind these price increases. Yep. I mean, it is a sight to see, and I do appreciate it. I like when reporters, even reporters at a publication that tends to lean to the right, does its job in fairly reporting what's actually transpiring in the economy right now.
And by the way, now both Republicans and Democrats that are politicians are like, oh no, and I'm seeing op-eds in the opposite direction now. Right. It wasn't the price gouging. Damn it, did somebody leak this real story? We can't have actual information in the media. They're like, no, it was the goddamn employees, their wages are too high. They're sick, they're disgusting. So look, the other thing about Costco is, I think that what they're doing is really good for business.
Yes, exactly, okay? Exactly.
And the difference between them and other companies is they're playing for the long term. We actually want to take care of our customers so they come back. So we have a good business. They're not trying to give away the store. They're just saying, hey, I want to build a long-term business that delivers for people enough that they always want to use it. That's how business used to be back in the day. And so they're going old school with it. By the way, there's another company that does that, us. So we didn't raise our prices at all either. Like for membership, it's still $4.99, didn't increase it a dime. And yes, some of our costs went up, et cetera, but we're still okay there. And we ask people to upgrade through the same join button to cover for some of the people that are at $4.99, but we didn't raise prices. So it is possible, They're just choosing not to do it. And when you see the good articles like the ones in the Wall Street Journal, shockingly, okay, credit where credit is due. When you see the BS articles blaming you guys and then saying there was nothing they could do, understand it is BS.
No, but that, by the way, the most nefarious narrative that inflation was caused by ordinary people getting a little bit of assistance from the federal government during the coronavirus pandemic. So incredibly disgusting that corporate media was trying to push that narrative as these corporations were taking advantage of the inflation narrative to price gouge us in order to increase their corporate profits. And then they would brag about it during their shareholder calls.
And then they would say things like, oh, they put too much money into the economy. And what did they do since then? They've increased defense spending dramatically, putting more money into the economy. But hey, that goes in the defense contractors' hands, and they're all donors. Funny. And what are the Republicans planning to introduce next? A $3.5 trillion tax cut for the rich. But that's all gonna go into the economy, and it's bigger than COVID relief, and it's only the great majority of it goes to the rich. They're like, exactly. Okay, so they're just, every part of this corporate infrastructure is meant to lull you back to sleep and get you to take lower wages and higher prices. And that's exactly what's happening here. And you can see through the successful operations like Costco. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. There's nothing wrong with their bottom line. There's nothing wrong with their business. They're still standing. In fact, they're doing fantastic without screwing people over. The exception in this case proves the rule that you can do it.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll tell you about the latest Trump-related financial scam. Don't miss it.
Back on the social break here. Let's go to YouTube members first. Shaylee writes in, and first of all, new member, great to have you with us. As a queer person, I'm terrified of increased violence this Pride Month. Things are getting so bad, I don't feel safe in America anymore. What do we do? Well, Shaylee, we don't have any choice but to fight back. And we got to fight back first rhetorically through the show and convince people, as many people as we can. And if you think, well, that's hopeless, it's actually not. Young people, including a lot of young Republicans, including a majority of young Republicans, don't hate LGBTQ people anymore, right? And in the old days, unfortunately, the right wing, almost all of them wanted to pass discriminatory laws. Now the young do not anymore. So I know it doesn't look like we're winning, but and the reason it doesn't look like we're winning is because Republicans keep fighting forward and the Democrats keep retreating, right? But in reality, if you look at the polling, over 70% of Americans want gay marriage to be legal, for example. Did you know that 2/3 of Americans don't want these anti-trans bills? Did you get that sense from the corporate media? Did you get that sense from the Democrats? You don't get that sense at all, right? The American people are actually on our side. We just need one candidate to fight for us. So hold, let's see what happens. Mick Mitz says bipartisan means the people getting screwed. In mainstream media speak, that is definitely right. On Twitch, Unicorn Dragon says, yeah, TYT called this, referring to the debt ceiling collapse by Biden. Conservative Wambulance says, Cenk is the best. Thank you, appreciate it. Octo Squiddy says, can we get some of that pay-go on the military budget? I didn't think so. Of course you're right. No, that'll keep on going. And the media will pretend that no, when you spend money on defense, it's magic. That doesn't affect the debt at all. No, it affects it more than anything else. But, oh, golly gee, did we forget to write about that in the articles about the deficit and the debt? Anna, your hair looks great. Dragon says MSNBC is covering this as if it's a masterful progressive legislation. Of course they are. Overseer Dixon says 25 months of Bezos bucks with TYT and an awesome community. You're a light in the growing darkness. Keep fighting the good fight. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate it. You can get free membership on Twitch to TYT if you have Amazon Prime. You just go to tyt.com/prime, walk you through it. It takes about 30 seconds. On our member section, Turkosaurus Rex says, Anna, I think Charlie should run for president in 2024. Let's make it happen.
Oh my God, he'd get my vote.
If we were like the establishment Democrats, we would run Charlie and then we'd say, no, Charlie's making the decisions.
I mean, he might.
And then like, but
He's
wait.
smarter than the average Democratic congressperson.
They're like, no, but it looks like Anna's just saying what she thinks the dog is saying. What, so Feinstein's not making any decisions either, so what difference does it make, right? We're all pretending. We're all pretending that any of these politicians make decisions. None of them make any decisions. Their donors make the decisions. They're just servants. Katie E, the Dancing Dragon, with an excellent point. Ted Cruz's daughter is a member of the LGBTQ community, I believe. Katie E, I looked it up, you are correct. And by the way, thank you for contributing to the show. Ding, 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 $100 Blue Apron gift. Oh no, I can't do it. Oh, that's terrible, I already promised it. All right, we'll figure out a way to get it to you. Sorry, we paused it for a little while, but Katie, excellent point. Rewards at tyt.com. And it turns out she is, and that might be another reason why Ted Cruz put out that tweet. All right, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Amy, and Renee Sheen. They just became Young Turks members and helped to get our progressive and just honest reporting out to the world. So they did it by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. You can do it at tyt.com/join. Thank you, Anna.
There's another Trump-related financial scheme. Let's talk about it.
Yes, the rumors are true. We finally launched the TRB membership handbook, and it's 100% functioning. It was a long and hard-working process to make the TRB system function properly, but I would do anything for my loyal supporters. The TRB handbook is the only certified way to invest in your future. My stamp, signature, and the latest UV mark technology can guarantee its authenticity.
That was an AI-generated advertisement for a scam involving something known as Trump bucks. And unfortunately, it's the newest right-wing grift that is scamming Trump supporters of their money. Unfortunately, there are already examples of elderly people who have been scammed by this. Now, before I continue, as we speak, there is no indication that Trump himself is associated with this scam. However, the people behind it, which we will name, are horrible individuals, horrible organizations, and have no problem lying to ordinary people and scamming them out of their hard-earned money, in some cases of their retirement savings. Now, Trump bucks are advertised online as a kind of golden ticket that will help propel Trump's 2024 bid and make the so-called real patriots who support him rich when they cash those Trump bucks in. So here's an image that shows you what they look like. NBC News has identified the Colorado-based companies that are behind so-called Trump bucks. Patriots Dynasty is one of them. Patriots Future and USA Patriots are the three organizations that NBC has learned about through their investigation. And the companies are using AI-generated advertising of figures like Elon Musk to claim that these worthless Trump bucks will make them rich. So here's another example of such an ad from the website. They advertise that if you invest in TRB membership cards issued by Donald Trump, the ads from Patriots Dynasty, Patriots Future, and USA Patriots claim, and the purchaser who spent, say, $99.99 on a $10,000 diamond Trump bucks bill will be able to cash it in for $10,000 at major banks and retailers like Walmart, Costco, and Home Depot. Except that's not true. The Trump bucks are worthless. If you spend $100 to get $10,000 worth of Trump bucks or whatever it is, if you go to a bank and you try to cash that in, the teller is going to either roll their eyes at you or be very confused, because again, they're worth nothing.
Yeah. So look, this is a super sad story. I mean, it sounds funny, haha. They, Republican voters think that if you buy something for $99, you can sell it for $10,000. How could that possibly be true? How could anyone possibly think that, right? But they do. Okay, but I don't think that's a haha. I think that it is sad. Like and what sucks is that the same group of folks are always targeted. So who do the prosperity preachers target? Do they target highly educated graduate students? No. And it's not look, guys, it is what it is. And especially with some religious folks, it's not their fault. They're trained from when they were tiny little kids. Turn off your brain, turn off your brain. We do things on faith alone. Well, how do I know what to have faith in? Don't I have to use my mind to figure that out? No, just the leader will tell you. And if you disagree with the leader, you're Satan, okay?
That's true, but there's also, let's not underestimate how many elderly people, regardless of their political background, get scammed by stuff like this, right?
And that's another thing that's super sad. That there's tons of scams targeting the elderly because they're having trouble, being able to process information, right? And so that's just the reality. Not all elderly, there's just some, and that's what these guys play the percentage games. But now I do have to say, there's no Bernie bucks, right? There's nobody on the left pretending that if you give $100, you'll get $10,000 the next day. Just go to Walgreens and pick it up.
Right.
It ain't gonna work. And there's a couple of reasons why it's not gonna work. One, our side is trained a little bit more to be critical and critical thinking, et cetera, more value on education. So those things are true. But the second reason is the left, and the left is oftentimes overly destructive of their own side, right? But here it would be slightly helpful because the left would rip you to shreds for this.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
They would never let this stand, right? Whereas the right wing think, oh, you guys are running a scam to rip off our own followers? Oh, cool, how are you doing it? Look, because I got brain pills to sell, I got penis pills to sell, I got gold to sell, I got Armageddon, get ready for Armageddon crap to sell.
Yeah, doomsday prepper stuff.
Yeah,
right.
So
penis pills.
A huge percentage of right-wing media infrastructure is built on pure scams.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the victims. Unsurprising to me that it appears that many of them happen to be older in their senior years. One 77-year-old Trump supporter who happens to be a victim of this grift is now warning others to beware. So in a post, John Amon writes, "Alert, if you purchased any of the TRB systems items, you got scammed. The TRB vouchers, Donald J. Trump golden checks, Donald J. Trump diamond checks, TRB golden checks have no monetary values. They are commemorative only." And what ends up happening is when they advertise this stuff, in some cases, if you read the fine print, it'll say commemorative. In other social media posts, they do not make that clear, right? So it's very easy for people to fall for this because there's really no disclosure in some of the advertising. Additionally, NBC News has found at least a dozen people like Amon who say they invested thousands of dollars after watching the pitches on Telegram and other websites that strongly suggested that Trump himself was endorsing these products. However, there is no proof or confirmation that Trump is behind or endorsing these products, right? That might change. The story might get updated. NBC reached out to the Trump camp for comment on this and they have not responded. But as far as we know right now, there's no evidence linking this grift to Donald Trump. But also, to be fair, Donald Trump himself has engaged in quite a few grifts and has scammed his own supporters, including through emails indicating that he was raising money for court battles to overturn the election. He did no such thing with those funds.
Let alone Trump University, Trump Charity, which were all scams.
Yeah.
He admitted were scams and paid fine because he ran scam charity and a scam university. So when you trust the biggest con man in American history, yeah, there's gonna be a cottage industry that rises. Like Trump is basically the beacon of con men. And he's put out this giant lighthouse of a scam. And all the other little bugs are floating to that light, going, oh, these are the easiest targets, in Trump's parlance, the suckers and losers we could all take advantage of. And that's why it's a super sad story. There's one more twist to this, or revelation within it. You notice Telegram, that's a right-wing platform, right? And they allow this stuff. So when right-wing media says, we don't want any censorship, part of the reason that they are saying that is because they all run false ads. So in a situation where you moderate a platform, number one, this is an affront to Donald Trump if you think about it. They're faking his voice.
I mean, they're using his likeness in order to sell this grift.
No censorship, no censorship. It's a totally false ad. It's every part of it is a lie, including Donald Trump's voice. No censorship, but everybody's making money. They're making money off of you. They're not making money off of us. None of these target progressives or Democrats. They all target right-wingers. And Steve Bannon, by the way, his co-conspirators convicted.
That's right.
Pretended they were gonna build a wall, took the money, put it in their pockets, got yachts, etc. Steve Bannon not in jail, why? Donald Trump pardoned him. Because the top mafia boss pardons all the other criminals because they're all living off of the right-wing scam. And it's so sad that they're leeching off of half of the population, and that half doesn't even realize it. They just keep funneling more and more money to them.
So gross. All right, let's move on to controversy involving the Dodgers. After receiving quite a bit of backlash for inviting a group of drag performers to their Pride Night event, and then getting massively criticized by a different group of people for uninviting the drag performers, the Dodgers have now decided to go through with the Pride event with the drag performers. But they're trying to do something else in addition to appease conservative supporters. But really, they're just going back to doing something they did prior to the coronavirus pandemic. If this story sounds confusing to you, buckle up, I'll give you all the details. Here's the play-by-play breakdown of what happened. So this controversy all started when the Dodgers had announced that the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence would be receiving the team's Community Hero Award during their 10th annual Pride event. So they've been doing this Pride event for 10 years straight with no issue. But because of the inclusion of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, all of a sudden there's all this backlash. The Sisters, if you're wondering who they are, happen to be a group of drag performers who wear religious garb, and their whole point is to protest intolerance while raising money for causes that support the LGBTQ community. Now, for example, they do grant programs for progressive grassroots projects that promote wellness, joy, tolerance, and diversity within our communities. And religious conservatives caught wind of this and they didn't like it. Now, why didn't they like it? I think some obviously don't like the Pride event overall, but I think the sticking point for many of them had to do with the fact that they felt that the drag performers were making a mockery of their religion and they took offense to that. So I'm gonna pause for comment. What do you think so far, Cenk?
Yeah, so I like the Pride events at sporting events. I don't think that's political. If they do the kiss cam at the sporting events, and straight couples kiss all day, all night at every sporting event, and everybody cheers, right? So there's no political message in there, and there's no political message in being gay. That's just who you are. You didn't choose that for politics' sake, right? So now, can I see why religious people would be offended by the fake nuns being drag queens or whatever? Yeah, I can see it. Am I offended? Of course not, right? But I'm an atheist. And I also don't believe that religious people should get offended. I think they're honestly being ridiculous every time they get offended. And I can explain why in a second. But I get why they're offended.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm also an atheist, but I can also see why they would feel offended by this. Let me go to Marco Rubio's statement. He released a statement toward the MLB commissioner, Rob Manfred, and he said this: Major League Baseball, as a private organization in a free country, can give awards to whatever groups it chooses, no matter how loathsome. But baseball has always been tied to our nation's values, has it? Okay, at the heart of which is faith in God, is it?
Well, to be fair, they did do segregation, which was the country's values for a long time. I don't know what that has to do with God, but okay.
It would be an outrage and a tragedy if the MLB, in pursuit of modern, secular, and indeed anti-religious values, rebuked that faith and the millions of believing fans who cherish the sport. So it wasn't just Marco Rubio. There was just a wave of right-wing backlash against the Dodgers, and unfortunately, they temporarily caved to the pressure, and they announced that they would no longer award the sisters during this Pride event. So the sisters hit back hard. They didn't like this for good reason, and they say that the sisters are not anti-Catholic, but an organization based on love, acceptance, and celebrating human diversity. To be condemned by representatives of the Catholic Church is particularly ironic, given that organization's long history of condoning and concealing the sexual abuse of children.
That's a great point.
That is a great point, a very strong statement, to say the least. Now, many prominent organizations also spoke out against the Dodgers' decision, and the Los Angeles LGBTQ Center demanded that the Dodgers should re-invite the sisters or cancel the Pride night altogether, which I don't think that's necessarily the best option, right?
No, that's the worst option.
That's
Why
terrible.
would we fight for that?
No, I wouldn't want that. Both the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California and LA Pride announced that they would no longer be attending the Dodgers Pride night. And even Dodgers staffers weren't happy about the decision. Many Dodgers employees were upset that the team responded so quickly to criticism by announcing that the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence would not be honored, according to a staffer who requested anonymity because the person was not authorized to speak to the media about the issue. Now, after all that pressure, the Dodgers decided, okay, fine, we're gonna re-invite. We're gonna re-invite them.
This is getting silly, guys.
A full apology and explanation was given to us by the Dodgers staff, which we accept. In the future, if similar pressures from outside our community arise, our two organizations will consult and assist each other in responding. And that's a direct statement from the Los Angeles Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. But now, what's being sold to the public by the press is that, all of a sudden though, the Dodgers have decided to both re-invite the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and do a separate event for religious folks. Except they've been doing that. They were doing that annually prior to the coronavirus pandemic. The last time they did it was in 2019. So I don't think that they've invented a new event just to appease the right wing. It's just an event that they've been doing, but they paused on that event because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, so look, guys, I love the name Sisterhood of Perpetual Indulgence. I think that's awesome, hilarious. I'm in favor of perpetual indulgence, depending on the degree and balance. So I like the group. I'd like to see them, God bless on all fronts, ironic. But so if you're wondering, hey, why did you say like, you could see understand religious people's objection to it. Here, I'm gonna tell you why, and you're gonna get it instantly. Imagine if they did it with Muslim clothes or Jewish clothes, right? Religious garb. If they put on a yarmulke and other, artifacts of like Orthodox Jews or something, and went out there and he did that. Again, I wouldn't mind at all. I'm atheist, and I think all religion is absurd, right? And same thing with Muslims, right? So I'm originally from a Muslim background, but if they made fun of Muslims in Muslim garb, I wouldn't mind. But do you think everybody wouldn't mind? I bet you a lot of people would mind, right? So I can see, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s where something like this would have never been allowed. And because all religious people would have freaked out and they would have said it was the most offensive thing they've ever seen. So I get why people are concerned that it's at a baseball game, but then you have to also, at the same time, right wingers, can you also be reasonable back and say, oh yeah, this isn't really about the kids, right? We just don't like the LGBTQ community.
Right.
We don't want the Pride event in the first place. Be honest, you don't want the Pride event, right? You're not, oh wow, I'm so offended by this religious thing. Some of you, I believe you, but a lot of you just don't want that represented in any way, shape, or form. Hey, producers, if you can bring back the Tesla pictures. So we did this earlier in the show, but Tesla is selling cars. I saw it in the mall over the weekend with a giant Pride logo and a rainbow and everything on their cars. And so now you say, oh, no, that's okay because it doesn't involve children. It doesn't? What do you mean? Children go to the baseball game, children get in cars. Children their parents buy them, they ride in this every single day, they see it in the streets, etc. So why is it okay when Elon Musk does it? So should we cancel Elon Musk along with the Los Angeles Dodgers? So no, just admit you're against LGBTQ folks in the first place. Stop pretending, okay? So I know it's impossible for either side to come to terms, right? But man, we gotta talk to each other.
I know, but okay, so I would prefer that we get to a place where there are areas of our lives that aren't hyper politicized, okay? And so understand what I'm saying. This isn't a Laura Ingraham shut up and dribble point at all. But I do feel that politics has injected itself in every facet of life, in every entertainment event, sporting event, everything. And the country's already so divided. So the second that there's some political event being endorsed by whatever, a sports team or whatever it is, what ends up happening is people go into their corners and they fight. They fight each other. And I think we need to get back to a place where Americans from all different backgrounds, with all different beliefs and all different political leanings are able to enjoy each other's company in non-politicized environments and remember what it means to just be a person. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, but that's also a tough balancing act. And I just wish we would have honest conversations about it so we can get to a balance that we're all comfortable with, right? Instead of the grandstanding that happens on the extremes. So look, the reason why I say it's complicated is, on the one hand, back when I was growing up, it was a right wing that would enforce it on all the sporting events. There'd be so when you do the Pledge of Allegiance, there's a God section of that. Everybody holds their hand to their heart. There's God this, there's God that, right? And there'd be sometimes religious figures would come out in the beginning before the games, right? And they still do this militaristic up the wazoo, right? I don't want to hear about your defense contractor great planes that you're flying over the stadium, et cetera. So there's a reason why the left doesn't want to politicize either, right?
Right.
Especially the militarization of these games. So keep that in mind. On the other hand, when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee, that's an awesome, courageous stand, right? When LeBron James says, hey, look, I care about police shootings, and just because I'm rich and it doesn't necessarily happen to me doesn't mean, well, number one, it can't happen to me. Number two, I care about other human beings. The athletes have a right to have their own political opinions.
I totally agree with that.
Left wing or right wing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like, it's different when individual athletes, because of what's currently happening in the country, want to make a point. I get that, and I don't want to squash their efforts to voice their opinion on whatever it is that they want to voice their opinion on. But I see it as something entirely different when the sports team or the league, whatever it is, like endorses and puts together politicized events. You get what I'm saying?
No, I do. And again, it's a tough balancing act. Is breast cancer awareness politicized or not politicized? I don't think it's politicized, but some people might think it is.
I don't know if there's like a big debate on doing something about this.
Thank God. And I shouldn't say it out loud because I don't know what they're going to get politicized next, right? But I hear you. You get to a place, again, shoe on the other foot is an easy way to do the calculation on that. What if they did an event where they made fun of gay people or atheists or something?
Right.
Well, I wouldn't like that, right? So that's one way that you can tell, hey, is this fair or is it not fair? What if it was done to us, right? So even us trying to have a conversation where you imagine the other side and how they feel is oftentimes considered like forbidden. Don't do that. No, the other side is just monsters, etc. And sometimes they can act like monsters. So there's a temptation to go in that direction. But there's a right way to draw these balances. And always, if there's politicization of something, the left wing winds up getting screwed anyway. Money always wins, so they'll find a way to inject politics in a bad way into all these events. So, right balance.
When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Turning Point USA working with a sponsor who has a history of sexual misconduct with minors. That and more coming up.
Sexual anarchy.
All right, we're back during the social break. First of all, we keep showing you tyt.com/impact for membership. You can go straight to membership, but if you go there, you'll see some of the impact that you have had, our audience has had throughout the years, and I think you really like that. And so that's also part of the price of membership, is that you guys get to have this tremendous impact that we couldn't do without you. So we appreciate it. I also want to tell you about a Pride event we got coming up here. We're going to politicize it on June 1st, right after the show. That's TYT's Pride special, and of course we are going to be joined by guests Daniel Franzesi, Miranda Scholl, and Zoe Zephyr. We've got our own Marissa Matthews, Benny Carollo, Maybe a Girl, John, and then John Ireland and Adrian Lawrence are hosting it. So just stay right here on tyt.com/live or wherever you watch us, and the special will be right afterwards on Thursday, okay? And then don't forget our podcasting network as well. Now let me go to a YouTube member here. DeBarlo says Anna's the best, hands down. That's all.
Oh, thank you.
And social media sucks writes about the Costco story. I'm in Washington, where their headquarters are. They have a great reputation for labor rights and have yet to meet an unhappy employee. Wow, that is a wonderful thing to say. Okay, Athletes LLC gifted 20 Young Turks memberships, which is amazing, and said, as an owner of 3 corporations, finance being one of them, I can safely say every owner knows when they push the limit on greed. Some just choose to. TYT, love you guys. Cenk, you're sporting a tan. Salt Queen, what's up?
What's up?
All right. Pitchforks Dragon says, I know this isn't going to be read because Cenk didn't read any super chats today, but as a Baydestrian, I like rooting against the Dodgers more than I like the Giants.
How dare you?
100, just say it. Okay, there, I read it. You're allowed to root against the Dodgers and for your own home team. Reiku Sensei, thank you for the donation. That's wonderful of you. Dorothy Hawkins says, thanks for looking out for us. Thank you, Dorothy, for looking out for us and the entire community by using Super Chat. Peter Hamby says, this is what we get when Biden said he'd do his best, in quotes, involving, quote, reaching across the aisle to help with bipartisanship, a disaster from the start. Yeah, I knew when he said bipartisanship that meant, oh yeah, I'm gonna give the Republicans half of what they want while pretending to be a Democrat. Every thinking person that's seen politics knew that. Everyone in mainstream media pretended otherwise. ACGC writes in, we need work requirements on Congress. Instead, they line their pockets with legalized bribes as it takes 6 months off a year and look down their nose at ordinary citizens. They have no shame. Miguel Quiros writes in, hashtag Cenk was right, and that was about the deficit deal as well. Jezebel's sister says, holy moly, I just realized I was gifted a membership 17 days ago. Thank you, TYT and community. Anna, did you have a chance to watch the AI Dilemma?
Not yet, but I'm going to, I promise you that.
A-Dubs, thank you for the super chat. Jonah Morton, same thing. Matt Gates on a white Ford Bronco says, explain to me how the talks for a debt ceiling vote included an approval for an back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Darber, Frank Black, Richard Robinson, Eric Montesanos, and Peter Pan. How's that for fun? Alex Benanti and Chris Birch gifted 5 Young Turks memberships, and Trisha Briggs gifted 1. You guys are all heroes. We love you for it. Way to look out for others. Anna.
Well, we've got a story that doesn't look so great for Turning Point USA. Let's do it.
The target has a target on their back. The pain of crossing the line to pervert our children and grooming them, it's going to be a lesson I hope corporate America watches, because ordinary America is pushing back. Brian Cornell, who is a groomer and a very sick person, very twisted, he loves money, and he really has like a fetish for going after children. Groomers can't reproduce, so instead they recruit. So they go serve on school boards, and they go do drag queens. And they do all this other sort of disgusting, nauseating stuff.
No surprise that Charlie Kirk, head of Turning Point USA, absolutely loves to accuse others of being groomers, dangerous toward children. Weird that he failed to mention that one of the sponsors of a recent Turning Point USA event quite literally happened to be a convicted groomer. And we're gonna give you the details about that individual as reported by Rolling Stone. So Turning Point USA's pro-Christianity group just held its annual, or second annual, I should say, Pastors Summit in Nashville, Tennessee, where speakers talked about, the dangers of wokeism, the typical stuff you could experience while listening to right-wingers. They also talked about the need for Christian nationalism. But here's where things get super interesting. According to Rolling Stone, one of the sponsors for this summit is Right Side Up, a Christian lifestyle apparel company that sews tags reading BSITL, which stands for Be Strong in the Lord, into its t-shirts and other clothing. The company's website declares, quote, we all have a life story, and it doesn't matter where we've been, it's where we are going that counts, end quote. Okay. Well, the life story of the company's founder, his name is Sean Bergstrand, is that he's a convicted sexual predator of minors, okay? And I wanna emphasize, convicted. So in 2014, he was put in a North Dakota federal prison for attempted coercion and enticement of a minor. The details of the criminal complaint are sealed, but a redacted indictment shows that Bergstrand was originally charged with attempting to entice and coerce a minor female to engage in prostitution and sexual activity. I mean, sounds like grooming and also much worse. Since the record has been sealed, we have very few details about the conviction itself. But reporting out of North Dakota at the time of his arrest noted some pretty gruesome details and allegations. So a complaint in the case accuses him of attempting to obtain another person for sex, knowing that person would be subject to human trafficking, and that person was less than 18 years of age, meaning that it was a minor. Okay, I'm gonna pause for comment. Thoughts on this, Cenk?
Yeah, so first of all, right-wing hypocrites talking about groomers actually being groomers themselves. Of course, most obvious thing in the world. It only happens every time, and they're always saying, "Oh, we're so concerned about the children." What about the children, right? And that's why we have to protest Target. How about the Catholic Church, where there was thousands and thousands and thousands of cases of child molestation? Nah, it's not that big a deal. Okay, so it's not the children. It's not the children. You just hate gay people. Anyway, all right, I got more.
More details.
Yeah.
So the former Bismarck Sergeant Mark Bushina said in a police report that Bergstrand initiated email correspondence with a woman believed to be sex trafficking her minor daughters for money. He allegedly made arrangements to pay for a sexual encounter with an underage girl through email and text message correspondence. So, I mean, just absolutely disgusting and gruesome. So that's who this guy is, right? Now, he was facing a maximum of 20 years in jail, but he received a sentence of only 1 year in prison and 5 years of supervised release. He was discharged from supervised release more than a year early in 2018. Now, he is a registered sex offender in North Dakota and will remain a registered sex offender until 2030. So he's a registered sex offender, okay? And Turning Point USA allowed Right Side Up, which he is the head of, to be a sponsor for their religious event. Okay. Now,
what does Right Side Up mean?
Now let's get to the defense, okay? Turning Point USA, through their spokesperson, says, it's outrageous to criticize us. This is a man who has atoned for his sins.
No, of course,
right?
Always, yep.
Except, it's interesting because in a video that he put out, he constantly talks about how he once almost lost everything because of something that he had no control over. Let's watch that.
See, Right Side Up Apparel was born out of my testimony. Some of the darkest days of my life. At one time in my life, I lost absolutely, completely everything. And all these things started to keep happening that I had no control over. But more and more things kept happening in my life I had no control over. And as these things kept happening in my life that I had no control over, I questioned my faith. Really questioned my faith if God was even real, because all these different things were happening I had no control over.
Does it sound like that guy has atoned for his sins?
Oh, it sounds like he's the model of personal responsibility.
What could he do? I mean, he thought a mother was offering up her minor daughter for prostitution. He just wanted to take advantage of it out of, no fault of his own. What could he do? He couldn't control it.
There was nothing he could do. He had no control over it.
Absolutely disgusting, okay? So Charlie Kirk and everyone providing cover for this guy disgust me. In fact, let me give you the statement from Charlie Kirk, graphic 9. What a joke. Let's set the record straight, Charlie Kirk says. First, I've never met this person. He was one of the many exhibitors at our event, I'm sure he was. He's not a corporate sponsor, but rather a small business trying to market his company. I'm told from the team that coordinates exhibitors that he's a nice person who did something wrong over a decade ago, and unlike Target, he repented and the experience led him to his faith. Good for him, that's the gospel. I mean, it's such a typical, reaction after someone gets caught doing terrible things, right?
Yeah.
I found Jesus. I found God.
Yeah. It's a lie every time. Okay, it's a cover for doing it again. So my favorite story about that is Randall Duke Cunningham gets caught doing corruption. He's a Republican legislator. He says on his way to jail, he does a press conference saying he found Jesus. He must have found it in the car, halfway through the car ride, because on the way to the press conference, he took a laundry bag full of money that he had stolen and threw it from the car onto his wife's lawn.
Oh my God.
And then on the other half of the drive, he must have found Jesus. Okay, so Jesus is always a cover. When Republicans do awful things, and get caught. They got to get caught.
They got to get caught.
And then all of a sudden they find Jesus. Okay, find a better way to find Jesus. Okay, so now of course no personal responsibility. If you notice, he says, well, that was over a decade ago that he was trying to take little girls from and have sex with them, right? Notice that when my blogs from 25 years ago that said slightly inappropriate jokes, they're like, no, he has to be held responsible now. A little different standard, interesting. But I think there's something more interesting too. It's their turn to Christian nationalism. Charlie Kirk said, it's not my turning point, it's the Lord's turning point. I'm both a Christian and a nationalist, but most importantly, I'm a Christian. So he's openly embracing Christian nationalism. Why? Because they tried free market crap and no one liked it. So they're going to religion to trick people that way and then lead them to tax cuts for the rich.
Scintillating, I'm sure that'll work. Yeah.
Yes, so every way to try to trick young people into working for the rich, okay? That's who Charlie Kirk is, and it's disgusting in every way imaginable. All right, we have more in the bonus episode just for the members, tyt.com/join, or hit the join button below, and we'll see you there in a minute.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K through 12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction.
So what if I have 35? Don't hate.